Yes, yes, sure.
Okay, Bidisha, namaste. Good evening.
Namaste, Jerry. Good evening, very good
Good
evening.
evening. I start all my programs with namaste. And
Namaste.
welcome to the OD HR Experience Conversations that we host every Thursday with senior HR professionals like you, with CEOs, CXOs, just trying to figure out about how can we kind of create best practices to kind of, build cultures of trust, cultures of learning in organizations so that people can thrive rather than feel stifled in workplaces. So, to begin with, I would like to know, you know, Bilsha, you've been helming several learning initiatives at several organizations. So, what's your story? What is your journey, and what inspired you to kind of decide to and choose to make your mark in the field of HR and learning and development, or organization development, as it is called?
Great question, Jerry, and a very warm welcome to all the people listening in today. And thank you for having me here. It's such a pleasure, after a long day of work, is to do something which is not completely disconnected, but something that I get to share my story and my experience. So thank you for that. So I think, many years back when I started in this journey of learning and training, I think almost 2 decades back, yeah, probably giving away my age here. But I think at that point, the whole concept of what training is or what learning is was pretty um, vague. Not many people understood the concept of learning and training, and it was mostly about doing certain technical skills, or rather skills related to selling. But it really had very few and limited components of doing softer skills work, right? So I think at that point, when I finished my BA and my graduation, I think I was very clear that I wanted to do something in the line with people. And I definitely did wanted to do something wherein I felt that I would make a difference to people's lives, right? Change their mindset, work with them to change their mindset, expand their horizon. And I'm an only child. So my best friends have always been books. So I've always read, and I still do. So I think from whatever I had learned and gathered and self taught myself about the concepts of learning and training, I felt that out of all the branches of HR, if there's one branch or one stream that allows you to connect with the people right at the top, people in the middle, people right at, at the helm of affairs on the front line, and also influence not only just these people and the organization strategy would be learning and culture and development. And I think the other reason also is that I think I've always been a born facilitator. So even though today, I have a team who train and a team who conducts workshops, I love standing up, interacting with people. I love meeting people and hearing their stories, sharing my stories. So I think that was a very natural career choice for me, and thank God for that, because I don't see myself doing anything else, and I'm extremely passionate about what I do, and I always believe that if there's one way to sort of change people's mind, change organizational mindset, it is definitely through this stream of learning, culture, talent development. So that's a short and crisp story about myself, Sherry.
Right. And which are the organizations that you worked with so far? Take us through that journey also.
Sure. So I think, I started working with multinational companies. I worked with an organization which now has been renamed to, it was called EDS and now Emphasis. I worked with three global services. I've worked with Capita. I've worked with HDFC Insurance. And of course, a larger part of one of my biggest stints, that one of my best stints that I've spent was with the Future Group. I spent about 8.5 years there. And I think, which of course was such a fascinating journey because no one industry was the same as the other, right? So whether it's telecom, whether it's insurance, whether it's KPO, BPO, IT, with EDS was tech, and of course retail. And now I'm part of Wellspun, which is a conglomerate. So we have a small retail setup, but it's largely a manufacturing organization with businesses like flooring, businesses which are into infrastructure, steel, pipes, Wellspun, of course, textiles, everybody is very familiar with. So Wellspun, towels, textiles, all of that. So I think it's been a fascinating journey because wherever I've gone, I've always had the opportunity to invent, reimagine this role, and sort of rethink the charter of what's been laid before, challenge the status quo, and forge really new, new ways of working, new ways of learning, and new ways of creating culture together with the people. So it's been fascinating. I've had some great mentors on the way, and I still do. So I think I'm very thankful for meeting wonderful people like yourselves in this journey, and yeah, that's how it's been.
Right, great. Bidisha, I mean, I've known you for some time now, almost around 6 to 7 years when we first started working together at the Future Group, and you know, and there are certain things which I have noticed about you, because you kind of make it a point to really go deep into the brief about what you really expect from that program, from that learning and development program, and what are the behavioral changes, what are the competencies that you would look at in terms of building in the people who are attending the training or the coaching program, right? And yet, in an industry where most learning and development people kind of treat it like a tick in the checkbox, you tend to go deep. What is the reason that you choose to do that? I want you to share this so that people in the audience can learn from your insights and learn from your example.
Right. So I think, every job comes with two sides, two skills that you require. One part is the creative, the imagination, the conceptual part. And the other is the operation or the execution or the excellence of how well you do it. And the third element, which is probably, below the surface or you can't see, are the people that you're working with. So if you have to feel that passion that no matter, even if it's a small intervention of a 20-minute conversation, that person should take back something that they value, something that they can't get out of typing out of Google or any other search engine, something that adds value to their life. So whether it's a 60-minute session, whether it's a 10-minute session, whether it's a 8-hour workshop, the stakeholders have to see the value. The first is the person who's attending the session. Second, the organization for whom you're doing this.
Right.
And the most important is that it's just that's how I operate, because I've always feel this T method, that go really wide in terms of thinking, being creative, but go deep, because it's not the number of interventions you do, but even if you were to do one or two, but you do them really well, and then you don't have to talk about your intervention. It's the stakeholders, it's your business, your CEOs, the participants who will talk about it. And trust me, Jerry, we were just talking earlier that today there are so many people from Future Group and from my earlier organizations still come back and say, hey, you shared this story, you told us about this, or you sat with me after the training and gave me this insight which I didn't have. And I think those little moments, I feel is it's not always measurable, but those are the ones that create difference in people's life. It helps changing their mindset. So I think my suggestion to all HR and L&D professions is definitely go beyond being skin deep, because a lot of people, you can hire the best of consultants, they can make fancy presentations, but unless you put your skin in the game, unless you really own this, you're passionate about it, and you really have to care about the people that you're working with, whether it's the people at the staff who are working in your factories, whether it's the management trainees, whether it's your middle managers or your senior most managers, you have to have a strong sense of empathy towards them, that why should they spend their time listening to you or attending your program. So I think I have a huge sense of responsibility that I shoulder, that if I'm designing something, I'm accountable for people to enjoy it and value the time that they've spent here in attending it. So I think that's what drives me to sort of look at both sides. Yes, create something very creative, but at the same time, ensure execution excellence, ensure passion, and ensure that people always find this is what I gained out of this experience.
Very nice. And I've seen that passion, because it's not only evident in your briefs, but and I kind of feel very strongly about it, because for me also, training and coaching is not a profession or even a vocation. It's more of a passion, because you're making a difference in the lives of people by helping them to change their own mindsets, by improving their thinking. And that's why I why when you meet learning and development professionals like you, who are not skin deep like you said, but have skin in the game, where they are so involved that they're not only briefing you, they're coming and kind of interacting with the managed and coming and kind of interacting with the I remember there was one instance in Bombay where you came to the venue and you said this hotel does not seem to be working right, and you changed the hotel the next day, right? So very few people would do that. And I saw that kind of passion and that entire devotion towards your job, towards not just a job but towards the entire learning and development practice in you. And I think that is what I wanted the HR people, the learning people who are watching this program today and tomorrow, to kind of have a solid takeaway, that don't treat it like a tick in the checkbox. It is not, because you are getting an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of people. Bidisha, if you had to get all your titles out of whatever titles you had at Future Group, at Wellspun, etc., and I just asked you to describe yourself with, like in Johari window we do descriptors, right? If I asked you for 7 descriptors which would best describe Bidisha the person, Bidisha the individual, those descriptors could be nouns, verbs, values, adjectives, principles, roles, responsibilities. What would those 7 descriptors be?
Wow, 7 descriptors, and to think just like that. Okay, so I think the first thing that I
Right.
will sort of
This
put.
is this is where I get to put my guests on in a spot. Yeah.
No, no, not at all.
Go
But
ahead.
let me
Go
think.
ahead.
So I think the first one will be passionate. I think I'm extremely passionate about what I do, whether it's my any responsibility I take up. But I generally feel strongly about things that I do, and I enjoy them. That's one. The second, I think I'm a very authentic person. So, wherein I know probably it's been said today, but what I mean by authentic is that I believe that sometimes, calling a spade, everyone is so politically correct in today's politically correct world that I think, somewhere we've just forgotten. And, there's always this whole concept of, oh, we have to be positive. We can't, we have to, sandwich feedback. But I think sometimes just the plain, simple truth spoken sensitively, if it is, something that you need to pass on with it, which is not very pleasant, but being authentic is a quality that I cherish, and I will. And I think the third one is that I'm a very curious person by nature. So if I see something that I like, and my tastes are not only to do just with learning, but it's art, it's music. I love in all kinds of music. So from Beethoven to Beyonce to Kailash Kher, and of course, like I said, I love reading. So I think my mind is very curious, and whether it's art forms or any culture, people, music, I will always dedicate. So that's three. I think the fourth one is bold. I think I kind of stand up for what I believe in. And the fifth one is I have the courage to follow through. So a lot of people I hear will say a lot of things, but may not have always the courage to follow through. So that's five. That's, I'm very courageous. So if I take a stand and I think that this is what I believe in, this is what my value is, I will definitely have the courage to follow through. Four, I'm a very, very work hard, play hard kind of a person. So I'm very, very high on hedonism, if I have to call it. So I love working hard, but I would really take time off. I would, value my health. I will value my family. I will have a very close knit circle of friends, but I really let my hair down when I have to. So I think I know how to have fun. And the last one is that I think I'm very humble as a person. And I think um, I will take feedback. I will listen to you, and I don't think being humble makes me less judgmental. So I can probably be open and be friendly with a lot of people, hear their ideas, and be able to understand and listen and empathize. So I think, yeah, you got your 7. So I think that's what describes me in a nutshell.
Very nice. I've noted all the 7, and I'm going to start with what you said about working hard and playing hard. And I don't find that hedonistic at all, because in my book, which on personal transformation, which is the leadership book called Mojo's Inspirator, I debunked this concept of work-life balance, which I find to be so defeating. And that's what every HR person aspires to create in an organization, without realizing that until and unless you don't change the culture, of the thought process, you can't change the work life balance. And we've actually kind of reinvented this in our book, and we say, why should work come first? Life comes first. Second is play, and third is work, right? So it's life, play, work balance. Because if your life and play is not kind of fulfilling, your work cannot be highly productive and effective. Any insights that you get when I say life, play, work balance?
No, I think I completely agree with you, Jerry, because I think that you live honestly, you live only once. You live a good life. You should live a good life, and I think life is much more than a 9 to 5 job. And I think, like I said, family, friends, your own hobbies are extremely important, and it's a great way. I completely agree because I don't really distinguish it. I have a lot of fun at work. First of all, I enjoy what I love, what I do.
Right,
And even with my team, every other Friday, there is something that we're doing where we're always planning, okay, this is over now, where should we go to eat? Or what should we eat? Or,
right,
getting what for lunch. So I think, or we've got some fascinating, people in the office who have great hobbies. So, talking about culture work. So I think it is completely not just trying to, there's two sides of the same coin, because if you're going to spend 8, 9 hours of your life at work, then how can that not be a part of your larger life?
right, right.
And I think when you do that, the hormones that gets kicked on your brain makes you happy, makes you productive.
Absolutely.
Happy people,
The happy juices are flowing.
yes, the happy juices are flowing. The happy people are the more productive people. The happy people are people who will sort of take on more responsibility. They'll have the fire in the belly. They'll be gung ho. And I think play is should be there in everything. Why should everything have to be so serious, right? So
Right,
I think today, in fact, even in any of our learning interventions, I constantly tell the teams that let us not use PPT. Let's use art. Let's use theater. Let's use music. Let's use other
true.
ways of connecting to people. So fun doesn't have to mean that you're doing not doing something serious. And I think that's really the test of the pudding. If you can convey something simplistically, beautifully through a beautiful medium. So yeah, and I think fun can be found in every way, with your family, with at work, and you can make some great friends at work too. So yeah, I completely live by it. And yeah.
Right. No, I'm so happy because all you said is music to my ears. Because, the reason I say life, play, work balance is because otherwise people become routine, right? You wake up, have some breakfast, drive to work, punch the card, do some work, have some lunch, do some work, have some tea, wait for the clock to strike 6, go home, watch some IPL, watch some Netflix, have some dinner, go to sleep, next morning repeat. And I always say between two punches and a lunch, you're crunched, right? And the other problem is that most of us don't love what we do. Doing what we love is absolutely out, because that's a very difficult path to take. And you just come to work to pay the bills. So then you become routine, and you become this very uh, you know very very what can I say, dispassionate kind of a person, right? It's completely connected to passion, because here is the energy that you're bringing to work. Because if you're not bringing that energy to work, you can't energize your team members or others. And that's why I say life first, which means that you need to be over life. You cannot let life take over you. Second is play. You need to be having fun with your life. If you need to be much about the routine, right? Failing which, you can't be highly energetic, you can't be highly engaged. And if you're not energized and engaged, how will you energize and engage others? And that's where work becomes more productive. And this now has been proven in several studies done around the world. Microsoft, in fact, in 2018 or 19, they went from a 5-day week to a 4-day week, right? Uh, in many Scandinavian countries, European countries, they're moving to a 4-day week and a 6-hour day, because less is more, not more is more, right? And yet in our country, in our geography, and maybe in some other parts of the world, especially in Asia and places like the United States, it's like a badge of honor to spend more hours at work, right? What are your thoughts on that? How do you think we can change that culture?
Right. I think it's already changing, and I think especially the younger generation that's coming into the workforce. I have a couple of management trainees who are with me. I think it's fascinating to know there's somebody in my team. She'll wake up every day at 5:36. She'll go for a morning trek, and she loves exploring places. I have somebody else who is a painter, and he would spend a lot of time doing that. So I think it's changing, and See, if there's anything the last year has taught us, is the one constant thing is we literally have nothing in control. I mean, you don't even have your body in your own control because you just eat and sort of put on weight. You can't do anything about it, right? So I think this whole myth of, that, if you work for 12 hours, you're productive. I mean, I could just very well be sitting in front of the laptop and zoning out and not doing anything. So I think I completely agree. And however, I'd like to say that, to each its own. So I've seen people who have different body clocks. So I always tell people that, when you're working from home or when you're working in office, you decide what's the most productive time for you to, when can you really think? Like for me, afternoons are not a great time, between 3 to 4:35 is not something that, that's when I'll really do my emails and transactional stuff. But the thinking work, all of that either happens post 5 o'clock early morning. So I think it's important for organizations and us as employees and human beings to really understand what works for us. So I would not like to be prescriptive and say, okay, I think because let's say European countries are doing it, we should follow suit. But I think what we should do is allow our employees to choose, see, because and stop measuring the hours, but start measuring really the
the
output,
the
right?
output and the productivity.
The
Yeah.
productivity, so what really matters is as a manager. And I think a lot of times all of this comes also because, from a sense of lack of trust, also because we as managers are not very clear of how are we measuring this productivity. That's also because we don't communicate with our employees that often. So if you have a quick one-on-one every day and you say, hey, what's happening, are you stuck somewhere, you don't really need to have 6 hours spent in a review at the end of the month, because if you know what's happening with your teams on an everyday basis. So I think our so-called performance appraisal systems have to be questioned, challenged, and we really need to get on a daily one-on-one, monthly, weekly sort of a culture where there is conversations between the line manager and the employees. And that's really when trust will go, when you communicate and communicate more. When that happens, you realize that, what does it matter if this, I wanted this research done on this subject of, let's say, quality assurance, and I needed 10 points on it, and my team members done a fabulous job. I don't really care whether they did it at 12 a.m., 12 p.m., and how many hours they worked. So I've always worked like that. And I think it's a two-way street. I would say that employees should also take that responsibility, because sometimes I have seen people also sort of take this a freedom given for
Granted.
so I think there is a reason that employers and promoters and founders are worried, because there'll always be people who will try to say, how can I also not deliver. So thereby the question is that if we start measuring outcomes and productivity, and really what's the outcome and the quality of the outcome, rather than I spent 12 hours doing the research, but okay, what was the outcome. So I think if we have that mindset, it will help us, both the employers and employees, to sort of align their focus and move to a world of tomorrow, right? Which I think today, all of us are working remotely. I literally can't. I have team members working across the country. I can't literally go and sit with them and stand, being like a helicopter boss and saying, okay, show me how many hours. I don't honestly. I care about the quality of the work, whether they had fun, whether they learned something. So I think these conversations need to start happening with line managers. Truly, line managers need to be trained on having these kind of quality one-on-ones, which they will start gaining the trust that, hey, my employee is not just faffing around. He or she is really putting in some quality, work there, right? So I think, that's how we can probably look at in the future of the workplace.
Yes. And Bidisha, I completely agree with you, what you said about how we should focus on productivity and outcomes, and how people don't do that because they like to micromanage because of lack of trust. And that, in fact, burns out the managers also, who are managing and micromanaging people. And, you are an exception to the rule in the way you think, in the way you do things. And I would have loved to agree with you that it's changing, but unfortunately I can't, because I work with all sectors, all companies, whether it's IT or retail or manufacturing or FMCG. So I'm sector agnostic as a leadership trainer and coach, and I worked across geographies. And of course, many geographies in Europe are better. And I'm not being prescriptive. I'm just saying that what works well. Even the United States is messed up, right? Uh, but there's a certain life play work balance that you see in several places in Europe, right? It's probably because they take their life more seriously, that we need to have fun, and fun is serious, right? The youngsters who want to have that life play work balance are unfortunately reporting to old fogies like me, right? And old fogies like me think, because we are from the old mindset, that only when we are in the office till 8 o'clock will we be more productive, right? So they end up getting messed up because now they've got a job, they don't want to leave the job because it looks bad on the CV, just leaving a job after 3 months because you have a toxic manager, right? So they are stuck, and slowly they become the old fogies, right? And that's what is happening in organizations, be it in Bombay, Bangalore, Gurgaon, Noida. I see it especially in the ITS services, where people are treated like minions and not really treated like people, right? So I think that entire mindset and culture has to change. And the reason I'm sharing the study, I'm not just talking about Europe. Microsoft worldwide went on a 4-day week, uh, working week, and productivity went up by 38%. There is clear research to show this. There is a science behind it. I'm going to pull up a slide, because if you are not balancing your life, play, and work, your basic intelligences are not at work, right? It's what we call as the five intelligences in the Mojo Inspirator learning. Can you see the slide? That's those are the five intelligences. So most of us come to work physically, right? And then at work, because of toxic workplaces and toxic managers, we are not in kind of engaged mentally to some extent, because follow the process, don't think, you don't get paid for thinking. Emotionally and spiritually, we're not involved at all. And the moral intelligence also goes for a spin, because managers are saying, get the quarterly results met by hook or by crook. The communication is all wrong. So all the other intelligences except the physical intelligence, because you're getting paid to pay the bills, is being taken care of, right? And then you have all these organizations which are in great places to work, right? Are you with me, Bidisha? Right?
Yes, yes,
So you
very
have
much.
this thing which every person in HR loves, that we've got a great places to work certification. And then of course you compare that with the Gallup organization study, which they've been doing for the past 20 years, which went down from 87% to 85%, right, in 2017, which was the 17th or the 18th year of the study, because they started in 2000. And what that study basically throws up is that 85% of people who come to workplaces and jobs worldwide, not just in India, worldwide, hate their jobs. Look at the emotion, hate. It's not dislike, they hate their jobs. And that kind of completely contradicts the great places to work listing. Because like you said, the fact of the matter is that, if you have people who are working with you remotely in different places, how do you monitor and manage all of them? You have to trust them and extend trust. And when you don't extend trust and micromanage and supervise them, they burn out, and it also burns you out, right? Now a little after the lockdown, I don't know if you're aware of this case. This happened in Gurgaon, and one of the people, I had actually coached him when he was in Royal Enfield earlier, and I kind of included this in the Mojo Inspirator book as a stop press, and I added this as an afterthought and an insight. So, way back in 2010, Ranjan Barua, who used to take pride in being a workaholic. He used to work with SAP at that time. And he used to say, I sleep for 4 hours a day. Teetotaler, marathon runner, gym enthusiast, right? Lack of sleep, collapsed at the workplace on the spot and died, right? This happened in 2010. 2020, BMW, right? And two cases happened. One died of pancreatic cancer. This is in the month of April or May, right? A month or two after the lockdown, right? The CEO Rudrajit is somebody I had coached in Royal Enfield, and I used to I was actually told by Siddharth Lal to help him to understand that he needs to get the balance, because he really kind of works himself and is burning himself out. And Rudrajit, within a week of the director of sales died because he collapsed, heart attack, anxiety, high stress, and the stress went higher in the lockdown because they were trying to ensure that they meet their numbers there. So this is what is happening now. Now, having shared these insights, right? I just want to ask you, what are the best practices that you have seen in the several organizations that you work, maybe even currently at Wellspun, at Future, where employees are given that choice of creating their work life play balance, work play life balance, sorry, life play work balance, because that's an individual choice which they have to be trained for also. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So I think, I agree with you, Jerry, that, that it is a lot of work to change culture. And I think before I answer that question, in our own way, whenever we do learning and training, when we're training, coaching new managers, young managers, we're constantly telling them about the importance of emotional intelligence, resilience, teamwork, collaboration, empathy. I think these were also not the skills or, not conversations that this age group, the 40 plus, 50 plus age group have had when they were getting groomed. So the good thing is in some way, even though if it's a drop in the ocean with the new management trainees and the new young managers, we're constantly talking about empathy, design thinking. We're talking about, living your life, having your arena as your life, values as a part of your life, not just work. So I think it will take time, but I see that there's definitely hope. And like me, I'm sure there are few others who trust their teams and who also value their own lives, to rather
That's very important. Yes, yeah.
yeah, rather than micromanage and collapse, on during work hours. So, and I think what some of the organizations that I've worked with, I've seen beautifully done, and I think that's one of the reasons that I think I'm very empowering as a manager. Is that I have been blessed with managers who've been empowering as well. Because the minute the manager tells you that, hey, what are your ideas? What are your thoughts? The project becomes really my baby. Then it's not just something that I'm doing, I'm executing. So when you talk about, that majority of people are disillusioned, disinterested, and they hate their work because they're probably not using, their brain to even feel, or they're not being, they don't feel a part of something. They're just executing orders. So I think I've always been blessed with great mentors who make me a part of the thinking process. So we go ahead and hire management trainees, we hire graduate engineering trainees, and we just get them to do nothing. So if you've got somebody on the team who's young, who's agile, the reason that you hire them is because they think better than you, they know better than you, not because you can, boss over them. So I think that understanding is very important. And I think some of the leaders who have this, one thing that I've seen organization do is leaders mentoring other leaders to develop this, because sometimes it can't be developed in a classroom.
Right.
It can be done, but if you see it, and if you see a senior vice president, and there's another one, who casually sort of, mentor somebody saying, I'm trying this new technique with the team, it's working. So I think I've seen that happen in a very informal way, which has helped some of the leaders who were probably old school change their perception of how they need to work with people. The second thing I think I've seen a lot of organizations do is give people the work-life flexibility. Let them come to work when they want to come to work. So I think, on many organizations earlier, especially with Future Group, we had a flexi work policy. So there were some certain people who were very early risers. We had like between 8 and 4. You have a core time, you come in at that time and you work and you move out, right? So I think that's extremely important as well, because you can't dictate to somebody between 9 and 6 are really the times that you have to be productive. Like I said, I really can't work in the afternoons. It's not my best time, but I can early morning, late evening is my perfect time, right? So I think giving people that flexibility. And I think also having, this whole work from anywhere concept, at least, so I think in the future, if COVID has taught us this, that people can still deliver results. The world still goes on if you don't show up, in a suit and a tie in a certain building, work can still get done. So I think in the future, a hybrid model will emerge and is emerging. Even in my current organizations, we're talking about much more democratic workforce, wherein we're telling people that, you decide when you want to come into work. Do come in once or twice, meet with the team. So you come into work to really eat, meet, greet, collaborate. But it's not really you come there and sit in your laptop. So the whole thought and the mindset of coming into work is to really network, interact, collaborate, meet people. right? And then we're saying that the actual work, and unless of course you're working in the manufacturing setup in the plant where you really need to be on the shop floor, but if
Right.
a desk
Right.
job, you still can do it from anywhere. So I think these are small measures that I've seen work. So that is getting seniors to mentor each other, giving employees the flexibility to choose from where they want to work and when they want to work. And third is also giving them the resources to do that. So if you want to
Right.
measure productivity, have a tool which sort of links their work that they're doing to their KRA or whatever they need to, whatever measurements of success you have in your organization. So I think these things I have seen at work, and I think it works really well, creates a much more energized, empowered, and a happy workforce.
Thank you so much for sharing all those thoughts and insights. There's a lot of learning in those thoughts, and I'm sure that everybody who's watching on Facebook Live would kind of benefit from those thoughts, because it's very important to extend trust, very important to mentor and get mentored, and that's why I always say that feedback is the multivitamin of champions for continuous improvement. And in very few organizations you will see managers taking feedbacks from their direct reports, because you know managers consider it to be their prerogative to give feedback without realizing that the team members work with you long hours, and they probably spend more time than even your spouse, so they know exactly what kind of a turkey you are. So they can actually give you the feedback and kind of help you to improve. But it takes a lot of security to do that. But I liked all the thoughts that you shared, and I think if certain things like those are put in place, then you create a culture where people can kind of really work on creating their own life play work balance and being more productive at work, being more effective at work, right? And I think that would also lead to higher employee engagement, which is my next question. uh, you know Organizations worldwide are struggling with employee engagement, right? Because it's one of the most difficult things to do, uh, also simple to do if you create a culture of trust. And employee engagement and silos is costing organizations trillions of dollars annually, because toxic managers cannot engage people integrally in the workplace, right? Because when you're reporting to somebody who's toxic, it kind of creates a lot of disgruntlement for you, and you want to be disengaged, you want to be maliciously obedient, right? So you do things out of malice, right? And that's what is happening in most workplaces worldwide. What are the some of the best practices for employee engagement that you've seen in your tenure as a HR and a learning development professional?
So I think one of the major reasons that employees come to work, or all of us get up, and because we want to make a difference, because most of us want to contribute, we want to, um, we all somewhere somehow have a purpose that we want to fulfill. And I think all the superficial things of employee engagement, which is having birthday parties and outbounds, need a part of it, which is really the social aspect of it. But I think on the day to day basis, if you have to keep somebody engaged, you have to give them opportunities to find meaning to what they're doing, right? So I think it's
Right.
important to first understand what engages them, what they love, who they are. So I think first take time to know your own employees, and it doesn't always necessarily have to be done through a psychometric assessment. Even a 10-minute conversation, with your employee when you're onboarding them, or if you've not done it, it's time to do it now. Asking them about their hobbies, their passions, what are their life goals, who they are. Like, you
Right.
directly ask me that, tell me 7 things that describe yourself. Get to know your people. Your
Right.
consultants, the big fours and your psychometric test give you that insight, but you have it free. Spend the time, take the interest in your own people, get to know them as individuals, not just an employee code who will deliver, who's here to help you meet your targets. The minute you do that, what are you doing? You're taking interest in somebody's life. And one of the basic human needs is to feel wanted, to feel connected, to feel that I contribute. So I think apart from doing all the other fancy employee engagement tools, and I know organizations have, sort of minted money doing all of that, one of the most simplest things to do is to really get to know your people, get to know your team members really well. Take genuine, authentic interest in their development and welfare, And once you get to know them, and now you also know as a supervisor or a team leader that these are my organization goals. Once you know them and you see you have 10 people, you know that among these 10 people, this is what really drives them, then you can very well then allocate work most of the time in things that would interest them, right? That things that they would enjoy doing. And I think also this is what, it's always mystified me, Jerry, that why such a simple thing of just getting to know somebody, taking interest in somebody's life, putting the focus on them, taking, literally, I always tell my team members that, take this focus light, if it's on you, move that away, put it to the person in front of you, because it's always about the person in front of you. When you do that, life just becomes easier because then you're listening, you're empathizing, right? So I think if you do that, if you give people goals that help them also fulfill what they're here for, I think a lot of your journey is done. And like I said, I've had managers who've taken interest in my development. And I'd also like to say this, that sometimes you need to also reverse mentor.
Right.
I've also had managers who haven't done this. So what I've done very smartly is I've just, as an employee, gone and say, you know what, I'd like to tell you about myself. So I always believe that it doesn't always have to be something that your manager does. Tell your manager that, Saturday, if it's, can we go out for a cup of tea, or can we just have a, Zoom call? Maybe not. I just want to tell you about myself, my family. This is what my passions are. This is my hobbies are. So what I'm trying to say is that always don't wait for somebody else to do it, not even your manager, because that's always worked for me all the time, Jerry, because I've never waited for the other person. Because, see, this is my happiness. So I can't depend on my manager to make it happen for me. So if the person wasn't proactive to do it, I've taken that step, and trust me. And I've told the person, I'd like to know about you, like to know about your passions, what's your work style? Tell me more about it. And I think those conversations which used to be transactional, like, hey, you need to do this, you need to deliver this project, moved from saying that, did you enjoy it? What do you think we can do differently? Or this is something that I think I trust you with more now that I've understood this about you. So I think it's a two-way thing. So rather than always complaining and saying, oh, I don't have the right manager, where you can't choose your manager, you can't choose your parents, you can't choose a lot of things in life, but you can always do something about it. So, take that action, do that. And I think conversations, enriched conversations, are the ones which will definitely be the game changer of employee engagement. So have enriched conversations which allow employees to feel motivated, wanted, heard, and then you will probably have to spend less money on consultants and outbound, fancy getaways and birthday parties. So I think that's really the
Actually get
true
very
sense.
challenged with the outbound training briefs where I'm told, take them whitewater rafting, make them play games and build teams. And I'm like, that's like taking a monkey to a L'Oreal salon. So that's the that's the kind of analogy I've created just to kind of humor people in HR so that humor takes the edge away from what I'm going to say, because that doesn't build teams. Because it's what you said, it's about meeting people, understanding them, knowing them. That's how you build relationships of trust. Teams are relationships of trust. Teams are not the team building games that you do in a simulated atmosphere, and then the other games begin when you come back to the workplace. So I'm so happy to hear you echoing all my thoughts, because this is what I speak in HR forums, this is what I speak in leadership forums, and a lot of people find it very counterintuitive because it's not what they want to hear, right? Because they think that the way they do it is how it works. And many organizations, like you rightly said, have this, like a cricket league or a football league or a kabaddi league now to create employee engagement, and they're so far off the mark, because that doesn't create employee engagement at all. And especially if you're doing it on weekends, where people are then wondering, through the week I've been working, and on the weekend when I had to run my errands, you're making me come and play cricket and play some kabaddi. What nonsense is this? So I think people really need to get the plot right. And there's a very senior HR professionals who do this in several organizations, right? Without really understanding that people are not feeling engaged and not feeling energized at all. So I'm happy that you kind of said all that, and I hope that's great learning and huge insights for all our folks in HR. Not just HR, because HR is the responsibility and role of every person in an organization. It's not a department, it's not a division, it's not just a few people who are doing HR. Developing human potential is the responsibility of every person. And I'm going to show you a video about which will kind of completely substantiate and reinforce what you just said and what I kind of summed up, which is by Jack Welch, where he says, all your games won't work, right? Because you need to understand how to really engage people and create that culture of trust. And what we've realized over time with a lot of research that I have done, Bidisha, is that one of the best ways to create employee engagement is to create a culture of learning, right? Because learning is growth. Growth is not just climbing up the career ladder and getting a raise and getting a promotion. Because most people who got those promotions by all the roguery and the jiggery pogery they do, they're still immature and still in their graduate days. They've not matured over here. And I think that's the responsibility of a learning and development professional or a leadership coach, is that you take that learning very seriously. You make it fun for people to learn and help them to grow. And that's why we are creating this rating called Great Organizations Affirm Learning, because that's your biggest way of creating a culture of trust. That's your best way of creating a culture of learning, which in turn creates employee engagement, and that in turn could lead to actually great places to work. Not just a rating, but a actual haven where people love to come to work and love to thrive. So I'm going to show you a video before bringing JC Desai in. I'm going to show you a video where Jack Welch explains how HR is the number one thing in any organization. So let's watch this.
You know, HR is, without question, one of the number one or number two most important functions in a company. I happen to believe it's number one. Many others think finance is the key to success in a company. HR is the driving force behind what makes a winning team. We make the argument that the team that fields the best players wins. HR is involved in making sure we field the best players. That's their job. And their job is to sit in every meeting, be involved in every part of the business equation. They're not the health and happiness, picnics, benefits team. They're the development team, developing today's and tomorrow's leaders. And if you have an organization where HR is relegated to forms and benefits, you got the wrong game going. I like to use one analogy. If you were running a sports team, whether it be the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, would you like to hang out with the head of player personnel or the team accountant? Who would help you build the best team to field? Not the team accountant. Same thing's true in business. You get yourself a great HR person, preferably one with multi skills in manufacturing, perhaps before, or in sales, who happens to be a people person, who understands that the role of the HR leader is to be both pastor and parent. Pastor in keeping secrets, and parent in telling it straight. You get that person who loves to see people grow, and you've got yourself a winner.
So that was Jack Welch, Bidisha, and completely endorsing and reiterating what exactly you said, that picnics, those games people play, that really won't build engagement, that won't build teams and collaboration. Any insights on the video we just saw before I bring in JC Desai? She's already here and she's going to share what we are doing with great organizations, Affirm Learning, to create a culture of learning and create a culture of trust. But any thoughts on the video we just saw?
No, thank you for sharing that. I think it's such a, and especially what he says in the end, that you have to play a pastor and a parent. So, and I think one line that resonated with me, saying that somebody who loves to watch people grow. So I
Right,
think that defines, and today every line manager has to play the role of an HR manager. So you have to genuinely care about your people and watch them grow. And, like you said, creating a learning culture, creating curiosity in people will actually help people get engaged. So thank
right.
you for sharing that video.
So I've loved our conversation because many of the things you said, in fact, I think almost everything you said echoes my thoughts, and pleasure conversing with you. And I'm going to sum this up later, but we have JC Desai from Tangram Consulting, and Tangram and JC and Avinash, who are the co-founders of Tangram, are our partners for the great organizations Affirm Learning, or Gold Ratings as we are calling it, because we feel that that's the only way to create a culture of trust, to create employee engagement, and to create collaborations and team spirit, so that the silos go missing. So over to you, JC, with Bidisha Banerjee.
Thanks, Jerry. Hi, Bidisha.
Hi, good
Hi.
evening,
Hi.
Shinsi. Lovely
So
meeting
great.
you.
Yeah, great to meet. Thank you for joining us here today. And it was good to hear you give the various insights on, your role as a HR and what keeps a company the best in terms of learning. So I had a couple of questions. So what we are doing is to build this whole uh, the questionnaire at this stage, that could capture in the best way possible uh, companies that affirm learning. So it's like bringing it all together on a piece of paper, but we have to do that to actually get to rating. So you did speak about a lot of what I would call attributes in terms of what makes an organization that encourages learning. So you did speak about trust, you did speak about mentoring, flexibility, engagement, right? So what any other attributes that we call, because in terms of testing, would you would qualify a great place to learn? Any other that you would like to put?
So I think I'm not sure if you had that, but also creating curious minds, creating a culture of curiosity. Wherein you use various methods of learning, of encouraging people. Varying their experiences of learning. So gone are the days where if you want to create a culture, you want to create a culture of curiosity, just doing sessions which are static, which sessions which are just one way will not work. So I think. Understanding varying learning experiences, providing to various learners is what I would like to add. Also, um, personalizing conversations. So both micro and macro approach. So personalizing conversations. So having conversations which are more individual development focused, but at the same time, having conversations around developing and achieving a organization vision would probably account for certain things that I have done and I've seen it work beautifully. Because the earlier approach to learning or talent management always was that you put people in a group and you put them through a cohort and you put them through a learning journey, and people sort of would probably flourish and do well. But I think only a few are able to take that learning and apply it. And I think what we'll really need to do differently is to sort of give people individual attention. So a lot of importance on coaching, individual development conversations, building trust with your own employees is also a great factor for creating some of the pillars that I would say that I would definitely endorse.
You did mention of enriched conversation even earlier on, right? What are the barriers that you typically see uh, when you start off these conversations, especially among not the managers or any others? What are
Um,
typically the
I actually lost you for a minute, Jay-Z. I didn't get the first part of your question.
So I said with regard to enriched conversations that you have, which you mentioned earlier, what are the barriers that you see with for people to open up, or how do you manage that in terms of?
Sure. So I think that some of the barriers that I see sometimes people have a fear of, if they open up, how would the organization or you as a manager probably use that information against them? So thereby, I think trust, like I said, is a two-way process. So if they see genuine intention of, you looking at only their growth, if they see intention of you looking at being a manager who will support their life goals and career goals, and are genuinely interested in working with them to achieve that, I think, and without any fear or a thought that, okay, this information of me talking about my vulnerabilities or my areas of improvements will be used against me. So I think some of those barriers exist in the mind of the person who's opening up. And from the manager's point of view, I think a lot of it also to do with time. It sounds very tactical, but today managers, like Jerry was saying, are so stretched. We have so much to do, so little time. People are being pushed to deliver more, more, and more. So that in that bargain, even if they have the intent, sometimes because of the lack of time, because of the lack of bandwidth, mind space, this becomes something that's important, but yet not that urgent. While meeting organization or visions, or let's say, or delivering targets becomes more important. So I think from that perspective, we will have to slowly, as a and as learning profession, HR profession, talk to promoters, CEOs, sponsors, management, basically to get people maybe sometime every week, if organically, ensure that they have weekly conversations with their team members, which is not just about, meeting targets and revenue, right? Which is about the individual themselves. Now, and that's why I always feel that, the current performance management practices, which we're privy to, which probably has an annual and a quarterly, probably quarterly or half yearly, has to change. It has to become more organic, wherein it becomes genuinely, you can capture a conversation that you have with your team member on a weekly basis, so that you get an opportunity to
Hmm.
build that trust, right? Because
Right.
imagine the all you do is you have two formal conversations with your employees in which you're going to decide their rating and their salary. I mean, I would think twice about trusting my manager if that's the intent. However, if my manager is taking, and these conversations don't have to be lengthy 1 hour, 90-minute conversations. They can be, water cooler moments where you probably meet somebody at the pantry, or you call them for a little coffee, have a 10-minute, conversation saying, how is it going? What are the challenges? How are you facing? These conversation and constant communication will help employees build trust towards managers, will help the managers empathize and know the realities. And I think that put together with a formal processing that, I'm not going to evaluate based on two conversations in a year, but I'm going to evaluate with my understanding how you've done the kind of output that you've done and the work that you've done through the entire year. Right. So I think these are certain suggestions that I can offer, or certain ideas that I definitely practice. And wherever I've gone, we've tried to change the culture towards this sort of a culture of trust and communication.
So the frequency and the type of conversation you're saying is what really matters. Uh, Also, in terms of the profile of the person, like when I was thinking of the role of a pastor, is a difficult role to not just take on, but also to portray to others that this is my role, right? So, any thoughts on that? As are there certain personalities that match better with the role of pastor? I'm thinking
So,
so, or yeah.
sure. So I think one of the most important role of a pastor or an HR person, like I always say, shut up and listen. You know,
Mm,
always
okay,
hear
that's right.
people talk, 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 talk. So when you're talking,
Yeah.
I haven't really met anybody who's learned something by talking, but
Mm,
really learned a lot by listening. So what I took away from that video is that one of the roles of a pastor is what the person's not um, somebody who's probably, you go person who listens to you, right? Somebody always
right,
tells you, okay, these are the pillars that we need to work on. So I think one of the most important things that I would say for leaders and managers to do is talk less and listen more. Okay. And
right.
also remind people on the ethics, the values the organization stands for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without being a very directive and authoritarian about it. Link the values in the organization goals and values to the individual's goals and aspirations, right? Because that's when you can be being able to do that job wherein you are able to listen to people, empathize with them, and at the same time connect their personal goals to what the organization is trying to drive. And trust me, JC, whatever I'm saying, I practice that all the time, and I've seen it wonderfully work for me because I've always had very high performing teams, and they are all ordinary people. It's not that I've gone and hired somebody from only IIMs and Harvards and
Mm-hmm.
YUs of
Okay.
the world, but these are people who come from very different backgrounds. But I've always looked for the right attitude. I've always listened to them. And I've seen my managers and mentors who've done that always had high productive teams.
So I'm thinking this is a tough task, right? Linking personal goals to company's vision. because I think you'll have to make it kind of different, show the granularity across different people for them to get a sense of it being personal. Possible to give me an example on this?
Sure. So let me give you an example of one of the current organizations or one of the functions. So for example, one of the values is of our organization is customer centricity. The other one is collaboration. Right now,
Mm,
you talk to employees and you get a sense of what they want to do in life. There are many people who don't want to have a 9 to 6 job for the rest of their lives. They want to retire at 50, 45, 50, start their own business, right? Or they
mm,
want to start their own practice of learning or consulting or whatever. And I constantly remind people that wherever you go, no matter what role you do, whether it's working for an NGO or whether it's about some people say I want to start my own NGO, some people say I want to be an entrepreneur, there are other people who say that hey, I just want to bring up great kids, or I want to be a
mm,
mom. I always remind them that the values of collaboration and customer centric that is there in the organization is so important in every role that you want to take up in your personal life. So for example, to be opening your own NGO, starting your own business, you need to have customer centricity. You need to be oriented towards what you want to, only you can only be a successful entrepreneur only when you're adding value to what people want. You're offering value, right? So collaboration comes in every walk of life. So I think that's what I said earlier, that the minute what their pain point areas are, what their aspirations are, it's very
mm,
to find a link between most organization values and goals. And goals of organizations today typically, of course, they have numbers and targets and revenues, but they also talk about organizations who want to become an organization with purpose, somebody who wants to look at sustainable way of working. So I think incorporating that into your own life is not that difficult if you know your people really well.
okay. So you're able to have different conversations with different people or make it kind of personal. That's what you're saying. Link it to.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. That's wonderful. Okay, just one last question on when we are looking at life values, play and work balance, right? Again, the question of how do you link the life and the work values? Uh, would the same answer be applicable, or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, I would take a step back because sometimes I feel that, especially if you're managing people who are not just, entry level staff, but also some people who've had experience somewhere, I think they've lost the plot and, that they've got to live their life and
Mm,
also get them to first identify what their values are. I think one has
okay.
start with that because sometimes I find that missing in the first place, especially with people who've been working for 10 plus years and now they're a part of your team. You ask them what are your values, they really don't have a clue. So I think as a great manager or a great leader, you have to get people to really understand what they value in life, what their values are, and how is it that because most of the values will are basically moral compasses. So honesty, looking at collaborative mindset, being ethical, all of these could be certain personal values. And if you see the values of today's organizations, most organizations always follow a similar or same sort of a cadre, right? So I think one has to start with those conversations saying, hey, what is it that you value? What are your values? Let me understand that, because if you don't know that, then how are you going to get the person to even appreciate a larger life? And I think I always encourage my teams, the teams that I work with across the country, I always tell them that please have a hobby, have something else that you're passionate about, because that's when you will come back to energize. You'll come back energized with more ideas. Talk to people outside your own function. So I think again, coming back to knowing your people, helping them to explore themselves will help them kind of open up their arena, discover their own true potential, and thereby understand their own values, understand their own life goals itself, and then it'll be easier. You'll be
Easy.
surprised, Jay-Z, that I've had people and ask them what their values are, and they really are blank. They said, but that's
Yeah.
honesty, I think, shayad, so I think that's unfortunately our education system also has a big role to play in these kind of answers that you get from people. So I think if you're a great manager, start by asking people, help them to discover their values, help them to discover, their passions, and then linking it to your workplace, your goals. It's not that difficult. Can be done. I do it all the time.
Okay, okay. So our thought in this evaluation was to bring in not just the values, but also a kind of personal strategy in terms of their what drives them to do things on a regular basis. So we follow the Helen's model for this in terms of the motivation. And what we want to know is any action or any decision that you make. I mean, even in our own lives, if you watch ourselves taking a decision, it is dependent on whether I want to control the situation around me, or is it I want to explore. So there's whole repressive and explorative kind of vertical on the vertical axis, and on the horizontal axis we have a person who's very individual oriented, is self oriented as compared to being socially oriented. And given this framework, there are about 6 7 motivations which come up, and most of our decisions, whether it is at work or whether we are shopping, or comes out of this strategy where I either explore the situation around me, or I control the situation around me, whether I am individually oriented or socially oriented. So this is a kind of measure that we wanted to include in this particular rating, to understand the individual first, their own personal strategy, and then how that aligns when it comes to work. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Because this for me is something which we have done a lot of work in consumer research, and it works very well in terms of getting insights for the marketer, of course. So we thought this would apply in HR.
Sorry. I think it's an
Huh.
excellent model. And like you said, you really can't do something in a larger group unless you understand the individuals. I think it's a
Yes, it's
strategy and I think it's a great study. I'd love to hear, definitely, once you understand and read through more about it. But I completely concur with what you said that, it is the X and Y axis and you cannot take from anything which is beyond also their whole values and their whole space as well. So it's two sides of the same coin. So completely agree with you on that, JC.
Yeah, we plan to do individual conversations for this to get a sense of, because it can't be done through a very prescriptive kind of a framework. It has to be like you talked about enriched conversation. It is that, and this is what we plan to do in this evaluation. So you feel that could help us, right? In
Absolutely,
this.
absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay. Okay, that's all from me, Bidisha. Really nice meeting you, and thank you for your wonderful inputs.
Thank
Thanks
you
a
so
lot.
much. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much, JC. Some great dance of insights over there. Great exchange of insights. And, Bidisha, like I told you earlier, delighted to be listening in to you because a lot of what you say echoes my thoughts because I always say talent and competence is overrated. All this, IIM, Harvard degrees, they're overrated. Research has proven that because what takes you to places and beyond is not your talent and competence, but your character, your attitude, right? And I think that is what has to be realized by parents, by the modern education system, that we are not teaching them those values which are actually powers. I have been involved in interviews for a group of companies over the past week. We've been interviewing people from all the premier MBA institutes like IIM Indore, Ahmedabad, Jamnalal Bajaj. And when I ask them character based questions, they have no clue how to answer it, which are all value based questions. And that's what I've been doing for my years as a leadership coach. And the entire Mojo Inspirator learning that we've created actually focuses on the five intelligences: mental, emotional, physical, moral, and spiritual. And that if these are not balanced, you cannot be holistically clear with your self awareness about who you are and what you can do. And I asked you for 7 descriptors earlier. This is the Mojo Inspirator learning framework. It's life, leadership, and learning to learn lessons. And research shows you that Learning to learn, empathy and emotional intelligence and growth mindset are the most essential skills of the future, which are not taught in our schools or colleges or at home, right? And it shows you that vulnerability is the, if you see where the arrows are, where the cursor is moving now, vulnerability is the striker, the trigger power. Because if the vulnerability is not understood, if you think you're everything, if you are arrogant and you don't understand your vulnerability as a human being and a mere mortal, you lost the plot, right? And then we focused on everything that you said. Passion, how do you kind of love what you do? How do you bring that, the junoon, the josh, the enthusiasm into everything that you do? Because if you're not doing that, you're not only not productive at the workplace, you're also counterproductive for your own life. And those are the voice conversations that you're talking about. How do I align the individual goals with the organizational goals? That, hey, this may just be paying your bills, but it does pay your bills. So why aren't you using it as a platform to learn, which can help you to do what you want to do in the future? And like I always tell people, there are three spaces you can be in the workplace. One is you are doing what you love, which means you may not be working with any organization. You would be an adventurer or an entrepreneur or a missionary doing things on your own. Second is you love what you do. And the third space is I come here because it pays my bills, which is 90% of the workforce. Not their fault. It's not their fault, because one is people are not being engaged by the managers. Second is because we all live with this feeling of victim mindset, Bidisha. Psychological studies call it victim mindset. Because we are not doing what we love, the brain registers that we are living a life where we are not really doing what we wanted to do. And that's what we've captured. We call this the Mojosh Inspirator Infinitum Learning, and the life leadership and learning to learn lessons. And what you were talking about, right? Because when you love what you do, the happy juices in your brain are flowing, right? Because what most of us think is happiness in the materialistic is only a dopamine rush. Because if you're not balancing all the chemicals and being grateful, so you would see it over here. It's we call the acronym dosage. And dosage, each alphabet stands for a happy chemical: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, anandamide, which is named after a Sanskrit word, and endorphins. And then if you're not grateful because you're complaining all the time, oh, these guys don't value me enough, I'm not paid enough. If you're complaining all the time and not feeling grateful about your life, not feeling grateful that you're alive today, then your happy juices are not flowing. And that's what you were talking about, how your happy juices are flowing. And that's the framework. You're passionate, you're curious. Curiosity is the trigger of learning. And most people are not curious, right? So if you see, this is where we are. The person, if that vulnerability is not plugged in, the curiosity, the creativity, the love of learning won't kind of be fulfilled. And I think if you kind of engage people in that, then people have to understand that values are powers, because they rewire your brain. And that's the learning that we are taking to schools and colleges now. And that's why I shared that education world interview with you. So that's what we are doing. And Bidisha, I was very happy to see that all the thoughts that you were sharing with us was telling us that we're on the right track. You were echoing the work that we have put together. So thank you so much. Delightful speaking with you again. My regards to all at home. My regards to Kyron and everybody at home. And thank you, JC, for all the insights that you kind of shared and fished for to make the goal ratings better. Namaste.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Bye,
evening,
Videsh.
what's left of it, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, for
See you.
having
Bye
me. So
bye.
thank you,
Thanks,
Jason. Bye
Vidisha.
bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.